There's nothing worth more that could ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. Join us if you know it. I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your There's nothing worth more that could ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. We want to welcome you today, this evening, and thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come visit us on a Saturday. We appreciate it. So we want to especially welcome any new people we have this evening. If you're new to Unity of Boulder, we welcome you. And thank you for joining us. Also, our live stream folks, who are glad to have you as well. So you are welcome to take pictures and videos with your cell phone. In fact, we encourage it. But if you would just make sure you silence your cell phone before you do that, then we would appreciate it. Excuse me. So if you're interested in becoming more involved in our community, we have some next step cards that are in the pew in front of you. And if you'd like to fill that out and drop that in the basket at the end of the service, we'd love to learn more about you. Also, I was going to introduce my music team, but they disappeared. So I'm Erina. I've got Dino on guitar, we've got Jason and Papik on vocals. And so if you all would just stand up and turn and introduce yourselves to someone around you, that would be great.
Hello, these are this week's announcements. This Sunday, September 8th, Boulder is having their Boulder Pride Fest, and Unity of Boulder is going to have a booth there, manned by our ministers, the staff.
Let's start that over. It's okay.
Hello, these are this week's announcements. This Sunday, September 8th, Boulder is having their Boulder Pride Fest, and Unity of Boulder is going to have a booth there, manned by our ministers, the staff, and congregants. If you would like to help volunteer and spend some time at the booth to help spread the message of unity, we're currently looking for people to fill time slots from 4 p.m. and later, so please see us in the office to sign up for that. Also this weekend, following both of our Sunday services, we're going to have a jumpy castle right here at Unity of Boulder for all our children to go play in. So please go out and have a great time in that. Coming up, we have our 12 Powers of Man class. This is a spiritual education and enrichment class. $85 to sign up, $100 the night of the first class, and $40 for your SEE credits towards becoming a licensed Unity teacher, plus the price of the books. And September 21st, we have a psychic medium by the name of Deb Shepard for an evening of spirit messages. It should be a good, fun time. Please see us in the office to find out how to get tickets for that event.
If you happen to have any further questions about these or any other Unity events, please visit the information table in the lobby after the service.
So we ask you to join us in singing this song, The Face of God. The lyrics are, you are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
Let's just allow ourselves to rest into this space as we go into a prayer, falling into that sense of gratitude that we get to be a part of this experience, in this moment, at this time. We are especially grateful for for the feminine and masculine nature of the divine that expresses through each and every one of us, making us all unique, special in our own individual ways, yet still a representation of the one. So we sit here tonight in this presence, special, unique, but connected as one. We are grateful for this is so. We now sit with open minds, open hearts, ready to grow and expand. And so it is. Amen.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
That was the type of clap that I was worried it might get punished if it claps. It's like, is this okay, Mom, if I do this now? All right, well, we're going to get started with our words of wisdom. I'd like to start off with some words of wisdom just to sort of present our topic to get us in our headspace before we get launching. Our words of wisdom say, our asking, where is God, is like a fish asking, where is water? Max Lucado said that. So we'll do a quick little recap for those of you that might miss the previous weeks. We are in the middle of a talk series that is based on this book written by Reverend Paul R. Smith. Is your God big enough, close enough, you enough? Jesus and the Three Faces of God. So in the first week we discussed how God is too vast to be able to put into words. Therefore, it's impossible to comprehend God with the intellect alone. And then last week was our second week in the series, and we dove into the first question of the book, and the first question is this question. Is your God big enough? Well, we're going to move our way into this next question, but as Paul Smith states, when we go from asking, is your God big enough, to asking, is your God close enough, we are shifting from reflecting about God to relating to God. One is trying to expand your understanding, your awareness, your concept of God, and the other is building a direct relationship with God. So Paul Smith says this about where we're going. Closeness to God is about bringing the reality of God's presence into our reality. I'm going to read that again. Closeness to God is about bringing the reality of God's presence into our reality. I think for most of us, we have this conceptual idea of God, and we think we believe in God. We haven't really brought the presence and the reality of God into our reality, our everyday life as we exist and as we experience it. So we have to have a feeling of vastness, an understanding of the vastness of God, while maintaining a very close relationship to the nearness of God. So two aspects we're dealing with here. And just like last week, Paul gave us some statements to ponder as we're trying to figure out how big is our God. We've now got some statements to ponder to figure out how close is our God. How close really is our God? So he gives us this question to ponder, or this statement to ponder. If we'll advance 1, 2, 3. How about now? How about now? There we go. Oh, okay. You know your God is close enough if your relationship to God, in whatever form and by whatever name, is filled with gratitude, love, and devotion. So we as humans are relational beings, affected and influenced by our relationship to those things around us. And it is very hard to have a true gratitude and love and devotion to and for something that we don't have a direct relationship with. Does that make sense? If it's too distant, it's hard to have those emotions, have this direct relationship with it. So there has to be some personal contact for that to take place in some sort of way. And oftentimes it requires us to humanize something in order for us to be able to relate to it, in order to create a deeper relationship to this thing. So it's sort of like giving your dog a human name like Sam, instead of just calling it dog, right? If you're just calling it dog, you're not going to have as close a relationship as if you give it sort of a personification, if you humanize it a little bit and you call it Sam or some other name that's affectionate to you. It brings that reality into your reality. So this brings us to the kind of relationship that Jesus had with God. Not one of a human and a dog. I don't want you to get confused there, because that would send us way off course in another direction. The Humane Society would probably get involved. No, this is talking about a humanized relationship with God. One of Father and Son, which was signified by Jesus referring to God as Father. And some may ask, and many have asked, why Father and not Mother? Has anyone ever asked that or thought that? Nod your head. Be a participant. Don't be afraid. You didn't get in trouble for clapping. You're not getting in trouble for responding. This is a safe place. No questions. Don't raise your hand. How dare you? I didn't say it was an open forum. I said it was a safe place. Two entirely different things. Can't let this get out of hand. It goes very quick in this movement. Okay. So he had this to say. Jesus' naming of God as Father was not pointing to gender, but to the caring love of a parent. The sense of the word father in Jesus' day was of the corporate personality of the family and included mother legally and socially in a way that is not true today in our gender-conscious world. So the Aramaic word that Jesus used was Abba, which, as Jesus used it at the time he used it, more appropriately translates to loving parent or head of household. Those two things sort of mashed together. So in the patriarchal society of that time, the man, the father, the head of the family, was the head of the household in all ways. He represented everything about the family in all ways. The father represented the family in all aspects, business, social, and otherwise. So when Jesus used the word Abba, Father, it was not only signifying a personal, loving relationship, it was also referring to the figure that represents all. Does that make sense? It's twofold. It's signifying this loving relationship, but also the personification of this entity that represents all, in using that word. So today we recognize women equally as head of household, right? It's not 2,000 years ago. We've evolved a little bit. So a woman can be head of household. Obviously, a woman can be a loving figure in the family. So we can adjust this old patriarchal translation of father to something of mother-father, or father-mother, or mother-father God. That would be actually more correct as what Jesus was using the word Abba to explain. So they are interchangeable as Jesus was using that word. And so we had the medieval mystic Julian of Norwich saying, as truly as God is our Father, so truly God is our mother. So relating to God as Father, Mother, or both Father and Mother, this is bringing what is the infinite, which is that very expansive, grand concept of God, into a closer relationship, a familiar relationship with God, right? We're bringing this giant reality right into our immediate nuclear family, making it very close to us. Which brings us to number 2, which he has us ponder. You know your God is close enough if you share your secrets and struggles with your divine beloved and listen for a response. Now we are starting to get really personal. We don't just share these types of things with any acquaintance. These are reserved for only those that are very, very close to us. And The number 2 here is really starting to have us engage with the divine. It's getting us into a process of communication and conversation with the divine. The first face of God, which we did a few weeks ago or last week, is that big God, that giant God. It is something almost too vast to be bothered with little old me, right? You have this infinite intelligence. How could it bother with little old me? That's just not possible. But now we are working towards an aspect of the divine that should be close enough and real enough to engage in conversation. A God that is right next to us everywhere we go. Yeah, you ask, is that easy? Sure, it's easy. Switching back and forth, no problem. If I could get a one-man band kit on me, I could just sit up here and just keep talking and kick drum on my back. Okay, we're going to move on here. So this is the third concept to ponder as we get into this topic. You know your God is close enough if God is like a loving mother and father to you, or if you've allowed Jesus to be your transforming friend, your dearest friend and constant companion, or if Spirit is your every breath of life-filled consciousness, and you are aware of her helping, healing presence, or better yet, all three. Now we've stumbled onto an uncomfortable topic for progressive Christians and New Thought people like us in Unity, which is our relationship to Jesus Christ. Now, just me having said that, some of you went, huh. There's a little shudder, huh. Got a little uncomfortable. And normally I don't like to do very long quotes on the screens because I think that can get dull, but Paul Smith not only addresses this topic directly, he addresses us in this room directly in this book, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, as you're going to see coming up. Unity churches. Whoa, we just got called out. Unity churches, while not usually considered mainline, are especially progressive in my opinion. Mainline and Unity churches tend to emphasize God and the teachings of Jesus rather than the presence of Jesus with us today. However, at the same time, many of these progressive Christians who come from more traditional backgrounds often long for the more nurturing, close relationship they once had with Jesus, his Abba, Mary, and other presence in their youth or more traditional days. Now they often seem to believe that it is no longer available because it is pre-rational. Mythic religion. Progressive Buddhists may still take refuge in Buddha or put their head in Buddha's lap, but evolving Christians may hesitate to do that with Jesus because it seems like the old evangelical personal relationship with God, who's both punishing and loving, wrathful and gracious. I hope that more of these thoughtful and progressive Christians will come to wholeheartedly embrace the three faces of God and come into personal friendship with Jesus and his motherly, fatherly God. So sometimes it's hard for us to wrap our heads around the fact that Jesus Christ was an awakened, enlightened spiritual master, just like Buddha, Krishna, and all the other saints and sages and gurus throughout time that people have a longing to have a close relationship with. In these other faiths, they have no issue. They have a deep longing to have a close relationship with these figures, but yet oftentimes here in Unity, other progressive Christian places, we sort of distance ourselves from that. But many of us in the progressive Christian movement and New Thought and in Unity as we are today have lots of baggage from our past that keeps us from such a relationship with Jesus Christ, which was also true for me for much of my adult life until I returned to the original teachings of our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. For some reason, growing up, I had sort of this aversion to Jesus Christ. Even when I'd hear my dad say it up here, I'd kind of go, I'd have this a little aversion to it. And it wasn't until my adult when I went back to the original teachings of Unity and read the Fillmores themselves that I started to have this realization. And it was also concurrently around that time that I was attracted to the writings of Paramahansa Yogananda, the guru, who also was very big on having a deep and meaningful and close relationship with Jesus Christ. This is when I discovered that I had spent so much time trying to distance myself from those two words, distance myself from that personification, that it actually had been at the expense of my own spiritual growth. Because I had been raised with those words. I had been raised with that personification, and here I was trying to distance myself from it, which is an odd place to be in. So the Catholic saint Teresa of Avila said, Jesus Christ is a true friend. Unlike our friends in the world, he'll never abandon us when we are troubled or distressed. Contemplative prayer, in my opinion, is nothing else than a close sharing between friends. It means taking time frequently to be alone with him who we know loves us. That sounds pretty fair, doesn't it? Some of you are like, no, not really. And now we start to stumble upon prayer. which has been a large point of confusion for people in Unity for the last 8 decades or so, not very long. Can we or do we pray to God and or Jesus? That is a question that people will have. Do we do this act of praying to God and or Jesus? If we're trying to get in touch with this God inside ourselves, do we still recognize this God outside ourselves? Do we still pray to this entity outside ourselves? That's a question people have. And as we are learning about the second face of God like we are today, we begin to realize that we need to have a personal relationship with the divine. We're missing a very big aspect of our spiritual experience. And in any relationship, there is a conversation, right? If you're going to have any sort of relationship, you've got to be having a conversation. So the short answer is yes. We can pray to God and Jesus, and as well as Buddha or Mary or Krishna or any other personification of the divine that feels comforting and friendly to you. Follow me? It's going to make that experience go from the reality to my reality, right? It goes from this conceptual concept of this very vast God to this presence sitting right next to me that I'm sharing this experience with. The relational aspect, the personal and conversational aspect of God might be the most natural and the most influential and the most impactful form of God when we do prayer. When we're going into prayer, to have that direct relationship with the divine might be the most powerful form of prayer that we can do. And Reverend Paul R. Smith says, I call the kind of prayer that I practice sitting with Jesus. Now, Paul Smith is not talking figuratively, but literally, even to the point of setting a chair across from him when he does this practice for Jesus to sit in as he's doing his practice, as he prays, which, as he points out, could be a chair for Jesus, or it could be a chair for any personal relationship of the divine that you have. He doesn't say it specifically has to be Jesus. But for him, since he was raised in the Christian movement, that is what he relates to. That's what works for him. And so whatever works for you, it might be, again, Mary, it might be Buddha, it might be Krishna, it might be Muhammad, it might be whomever. But to have that personal relationship so close that you would set out a chair for this guest to have this prayer time with. And this may sound like something that is a foreign concept to some people, but believe it or not, this is actually deeply rooted in unity. This is the same process that our co-founder, Myrtle Fillmore, Charles's wife, used to heal herself of tuberculosis. She would, in fact, set out a chair for Jesus Christ to sit in each day, and she would sit for hours with this presence, conversing, praying, affirming, and claiming her wholeness as a child of God who cannot and will not inherit disease. And she found power in doing that, and her friend and role model was there with her. And through this process, she did heal herself of tuberculosis. So I want to look at this quote from Jesus in the book of John. I do not call you servants any longer because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends because I have made known to you everything that I've heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. This is the kind of friend who is with us through thick and thin, whether we ask them to or not. Does anyone have a friend like that? Wow, we got to work on that. Maybe that's the sign of the modern age. We don't have these kinds of friends. It's good to have the kind of friend that's with you through thick or thin, whether you ask them to or not, whether you're upset at them or not, whether you ask them to go away or not, they're still there helping you. That's the kind of friend you want to have. That's a real kind of friend. And it's a powerful relationship to have. This is the kind of relationship we're talking about here with Christ. So there's power in this personal, relational prayer process. It becomes more of a conversation and less of an effort to try to reach out to something that's so far away it probably doesn't have time to hear you and can't hear you because it's too vast. We're trying to make the unknown knowable in this process. Which brings us to number 4. Your God is close enough if you know that God is aware of you personally. Now, if we got lost in the vastness of God, in the first face of God as we were talking about it, the second face of God is about balancing out the vastness with the closeness of God. So close that the God knows me, recognizes me, cares about me, stands beside me, and knows my name. I'm important in the eyes of God. The second face of God makes us understand how important we are in the eyes of God. Because the first face of God, we could go, God's so vast, I'm just a speck on a speck on a speck. How could I possibly matter? But the second face of God is this relational God that says, God is right here. God is a close friend that's helping me each step of the way and knows I'm a valued participant in this relationship. It's a very different experience, but both valuable experiences. From Isaiah, it says, the one who created you says, do not be afraid. I have called you by name. You are mine. This is a divine presence that knows us by name, has the very hairs on our head counted, as another quote says. Now let's get to the most important, I believe, number 5. You know your God is close enough if you can fall in love with the intimate face of God beside you. If you can fall in love with the intimate face of God beside you. What we're talking about here is agape love, unconditional love, not the fleeting, distorted, surface, sort of desire-based love that we do as humans that sort of comes and goes depending on whether we like the person or not. Jesus put it this way in Luke, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind. This is the first of the 2 great commandments. Falling in agape love with the divine, falling in agape love with God, the deepest form of a personal relationship with this presence. It can't get any deeper than that, and that's what we're striving for. That's what we're working towards. But for many of us, our concept of God is much too small to really even be able to comprehend what we're talking about here. So this means we not only need a bigger God, we need a bigger love as well. We have to expand our concept of God to even be able to start to step towards this concept of agape love with God, right? This love so big that it reaches this expanse so big, and this love so powerful that it reaches this entity that's right next to me at all times, right? Not only are we making God bigger, God closer, we got to make our love bigger, we got to make our love closer to really harbor this relationship to make it work. So falling in love with God has been the primary focus of my spiritual practice in the last few years. Like having a relationship with Jesus Christ, I also had an aversion to being able to say, I love you, God. I would say that sounds very corny. When I'd try to say that in private or I'd say that around other people, I just felt really awkward doing that, really corny doing that, like it was forced, like it wasn't genuine, it wasn't real. I wasn't feeling it, so I just stayed away from it altogether. But this is a crucial and invaluable step in our spiritual growth, to be able to say that. Could you imagine not being able to say I love you back to the very essence of love itself? It's such a distorted and sad concept, but I was there, and I'm sure many of us there, it felt awkward to say, I love you, God. Here's the very essence of love, and I can't go out of my way to say, I return this love back to you. Thank you for all that you've given me. To be able to break down that wall of awkwardness and say, no, I absolutely love you, God. Thank you for everything I have. Thank you for all these incredible blessings. I'm so grateful. I love you, God. Getting to that place just sort of breaks open the barriers around the heart and that scar tissue and just tears it apart and says, no, I'm here. I feel this essence. I know it's important. I have humility surrounding it, and I want to share it with the world because it's so impactful and powerful for me. Well, I want to let the poet Rumi close us out today, primarily because he has a really cool hat. Other than that, I'm not sure I know anything about Rumi. This is what he said. Soul, if you want to learn secrets, your heart must forget about shame and dignity. You are God's lover, yet you worry what people are saying. There are thousands of wines that can take over our minds. But don't think all ecstasies are the same. Jesus was lost in his love for God. His donkey was drunk with barley. Jesus was drinking the wine of the Spirit, the love of God. He was just filled with that presence. But those trapped in the animalistic nature of the world, of this physical experience, are drunk with the worldly desires, the worldly delights, which entrap them into this experience. They're just lost in this circle of this desire for the physical things, and it entraps them into this circle of the desire for physical things. Our goal is to love God as someone so near and dear that we feel this presence right beside us. That is what we're working towards. And that is the truth as I experience it. We're going to take a moment to go into the silence. I invite you just to center yourself, to rest into your seat, and take a moment for internal reflection.
In the silence there is peace. In the silence there is unspoken joy. In the silence there's release from a world filled with chaos and noise. I awake to these precious moments when I hear all that could never be said, and right here in this holy silence I find God. I find myself.
And so we breathe into this presence. Imagining this essence right beside us, so much so that we feel it. The same feeling that we can tell when someone has walked into the room, when they've stepped up beside us, without us having to hear or see, we just sense it. And we sense that presence now. We sense that it has a female and masculine nature. We sense that it's friendly, it's loving, it's kind, it's caring. We know we're supported, we're safe. We know that wherever we go, it's going to be right there, no matter how distracted we might get in this world. It just requires us to slow down and become aware of the presence that stands right next to us, ready to engage, to help, to listen. At any point during our lives, when we feel disconnected or lost, struggling, we allow ourselves to slow down, to take a breath, and to feel for a moment this presence. It never left. It's always been there. It is only I that have turned a blind eye. But now I choose to be aware. I choose to be present. And I sit with this essence. grateful. And so it is. Amen. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me in this process. So this is the part of our service we'd like to remind you that we do welcome your gifts of any sort, and that we're not passing a plate or a basket to try to guilt you or pressure you into giving. We're simply here to ignite the natural giver that's within you right now. Every one of us has a giver inside that can't wait to be a part of the process of sharing the flow of Spirit moving forward in the form of the physical experience, so that we're not giving to Source, we're not giving to something, but we are giving as Source. We are giving as the divine, moving into this physical experience of our blessings, our gifts, and our treasures. So we have many ways for you to give. They're up there on the screen, from texting to our app to signing up with recurring donations. We also have the baskets in the back of the room if you want to partake of that on your way out, and many other ways to do that online. So now we're going to move to a part of our service that I'm becoming to enjoy very much and very excited about. It's called the Spotlight segment. And this is where we like to spotlight different people, places, things happening in our community right now that we find important and valuable. And today we're going to have one of our volunteers, Dan Spahn, share his Unity experience with us. And this was inspired because Dan just started talking to me probably 2 weeks ago, just in a moment of inspiration, sharing with me his Unity experience. And we both said, wow, more people should hear that. So if you haven't met Dan, this is Dan. And Dan is normally sitting upstairs running our lights.
I'm the lighting guy up there, so I'm more used to creating a spotlight than being in one, so.
So here you go.
And can I get rid of this? I'm more comfortable just.
Your t-shirt or the microphone?
No.
Well, people got to hear you on the live stream as well.
Well, hopefully you can hear me, but I'm more comfortable projecting. I wanted to take a moment to tell you that a little bit about what I've gone through. I was raised a Catholic, so I've heard the teachings of Jesus Christ my entire life. But Jesus Christ was far away. He was on a cloud somewhere, and if I was good enough, someday I would go to heaven and I would partake of his kingdom. So like many people, I drifted from the church and I went out and started acquiring things and becoming a workaholic and just living the American dream. And about 5 years ago, I had a bit of a meltdown. I didn't know why I was here. I felt empty, I felt stressed. And my mother, who some of you might know, Sandy Spahn, said, hey, I got just a place for you. Why don't you come to Unity? And all of a sudden, I was inspired to try and walk within the footsteps of Jesus Christ. And it's really saved my life. It really has. My stress level has come down. My joy has skyrocketed. And as I would go home, I would come here and I would throw $1 in the plate when it went by. But when I went home, I realized that what I was getting out of this place and what I was giving, there was no comparison. So I signed up for what's called recurring tithing, where you just decide, I'm going to give $10 a week or $15 a week, whatever it is that you get out of this place, and it's automatically taken out of your credit card. And I got to tell you, it has made me feel so good. And every year I've increased it a little bit, and I realize really that to be grateful is not to be afraid that you don't have enough. So I just wanted to say to every one of you, if you haven't thought about it, it's an easy way to go, and then you can feel that this place will be around for years to come to spread this great message, and the Groverlands will help other people find their joy. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. And Dan's here during the week programming the lights. I mean, he gives of his time. He's also on our board of trustees, so if you haven't met him, say hi to him. He's a good guy. All right. Well, I want to thank you all coming for this experience again, and obviously you see how powerful and transformative it is for people like Dan and other people that are sitting here today. I know many of you, I can recognize faces, have had that same exact experience Dan has had. And one thing I want to point out, we are doing the Pride Festival tomorrow, which is down by the Boulder Creek area by the band shell and all that, and we do need some volunteers to sign up for the afternoon shift, so there is a sign-up sheet out on the information table. I'm probably going to be there all day with Erna. I can't imagine we'll find a way to get away. We're probably just going to have so much fun, we'll hang out anyway. And this is an important cause, to get Unity out, to get people to see Unity and get to recognize that we are the most diverse experience on the planet. There's others probably equal to us. I don't want to say that. I don't want to be selfish, but we actually are. All right. So thank you very much, and enjoy this song.
Shad. He's supposed to play the drums on this song. I'm wondering why there's no beat. That's why. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4.
you can, do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can with what you have, in the time you have.
place